What's the first thing you end up doing?
Venture capital world was exploding here in Austin as well as, in other places. But, and strangely, I was brought into that organization or was recruited by them because I was coming from...
What was your biggest learning from that? Growth, pressure, money, VC. What's the problem?
What's your problem?
What's the second venture that you go to after?
After Wayport, a company called Advent Networks. Advent Networks was what they then called the IP AAA. It pulled it in with one of its customers.
What does the customer want?
You're spot on. What's your exit strategy? Yeah. My glib answer is I don't have an exit strategy.
What's your question for a future guest? Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Ken Platt. He's held various operations and supply chain roles, leadership roles over his early career. He was the COO of Limitless Innovation, Inc. He was the CEO of Perif EX Corporation. Also, Perifex. I'll start again.
We can go. Sorry.
Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Ken Platt. He's held various operations and supply chain executive roles over his early career. He was the CEO of Limitless Innovation, Inc. He was the COO of Perifex Corporation. He was the founder and MD at Clark Addison Group, where you advise and mentor a lot of startups ranging from healthcare to CPG and try to get their ideas out in market and marketable. And most recently, you're also the CEO and co-founder of SmartPack Systems.
Correct.
Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you.
One thing I like to start asking my guests off is, where do you think your entrepreneurial journey started?
My entrepreneurial journey started probably later than most. I was working, doing project work for a large corporation based out of Chicago, which is where I grew up. And part of that was working with their user divisions, converting their planning and ERP and MRP systems to Y2K compliant platforms. If you remember that little problem from 25 years ago. And what I found was I was getting to go on site to many different business units and do evaluation and assessment of what they were doing. And I just thought, this is such an extraordinary way to learn about and understand businesses and then get your hands dirty actually executing solutions. They brought me down here to Austin to work with one of their user groups after I had done their project for them. And it was at that time that I got pulled into we'll call it the startup vortex. That was Austin during the dot-com bubble days. Yeah. Everybody was doing startups. And that's sort of where I really caught the bug of working with startup companies and ended up doing several more from there, both as jumping in early or as a founder. Because what attracted me to it most was there is no middle management in a startup. Yeah. There's no place to hide in a startup. Your successes are very visible. Your failures are very visible. But at the same time, there's a collaborative piece of that 100%. That you're working with everybody for a very common goal. And when you're working in large companies, it's pretty hard to see where everything you do every day has a direct impact on the total business. Yeah. In a startup, that's just the case. In large companies, it would be impossible to 100%. For that sort of thing. So, discovering that piece of the journey and understanding there's a risk profile that's involved with that. You have to be a bit of a thrill junkie maybe. Yeah. Most people have long careers and great professions and work great jobs, and they work for companies and organizations, and they do this their entire careers, and they're very successful, and they earn great and get all the wonderful benefits that come along with that, and their 401ks and their weeks of vacation and all the promotions you can ask for. And then for an entrepreneur, that's like a fate worse than death.
100%.
Right? These people, we just want to build stuff and solve problems and get onto things. So that's kind of where it began for me, was just once you have a taste of that and you realize this is what I really, really want to do, this is kind of what lights you up. It's pretty hard to step away from the realm.
Do you enjoy the chaos?
I love the chaos, because for me, what I do most of all is I like to create order out of the chaos. I'm an operations guy.
Yeah.
I think my brain just works in certain logical patterns, and I love to see, to take in all of that chaotic activity and just look to where the patterns emerge. I mean, chaos theory is a little like that, right? Where they say not just patterns emerge, but there's often great beauty you could see in the chaos and how things actually are going to come together. So yeah, I mean, I don't like chaos for the sake of chaos. I don't like chaotic situations to remain chaotic, but I am drawn to the chaos in a way that, how do we solve this problem?
I like it. So you come to Austin. What's the first thing you end up doing, or the first company or first venture that you end up working with?
Startup?
Yeah. Startup.
Venture?
Yeah.
It was a company called Wayport. Wayport was founded by a couple of the, as I recall, it was a couple of the engineers that actually sat on the IEEE standards board that developed 802.11. So I guess you could say they invented Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And Wayport was, our business was wiring up public spaces with Wi-Fi, airports, hotels, Starbucks, all the things that you take for granted now all have Wi-Fi. Back then did not. In fact, your laptop didn't even have Wi-Fi. You needed to buy what was about a $700 card.
Yeah.
A PCI card you'd slide into the slot, and that's how you would activate your Wi-Fi. So that company, back then, raising, $100+ million wasn't difficult. As strange as that sounds, people were throwing money like crazy. The venture capital world was exploding here in Austin, as well as, in other places. But, and strangely, I was brought into that organization, or was recruited into by them, because I was coming from big global manufacturing and supply chain, what they then called old economy. And everybody was talking about the new economy. And all I kept thinking was, there's really only one economy, and somehow we're going to have to make money or we go out of business. It's not, but there was a very different view on startups and funding. We had investors telling us we weren't spending it fast enough. They wanted to keep pouring more money in, with expand faster, grow faster. The whole idea was just, everything was big explosion and big exit. So, that was, it was a learning curve for me, in that it was my first foray into real technologies.
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer, but I had to learn very quickly how to make and build and do things using all manner of electronic components. I took courses in circuit board design and component design, and because I was the guy responsible for taking all of these things that were being designed and then building them, which is where my
ops and supply chain.
It was sort of my ops thing kind of really grew into the thing of, where I focus a lot nowadays is, I when I work with founders, I tell them I'm not the guy with the idea. I'm the other guy. I'm the guy who knows how to turn your idea into an actual product and to operationalize what you've got. And I'm more than good with that. I'm great with that because I love working with creatives. I love working with the people with these ideas and helping them realize the vision that they've got, because most don't know how to turn the idea into the thing. And that thing could be anything from, hardware to a software platform.
What was the outcome with Wayport, and what was your biggest learning from that? Growth, pressure, money, VC.
The outcome was Wayport got acquired by AT&T. In fact, there are certain places that you could probably still go to and log in at a hotel or something, and you'll still find a Wayport IP address somewhere.
Interesting.
And part of the reason for that, and talk about, some of the things you learn. One of them was these guys, they designed and built their own routers. And I was like, Cisco makes a pretty good router. We could just buy that thing off the shelf. But again, when you are dealing with the uber talented designer, the super creative engineer, everything becomes what we used to call not invented here syndrome. And if we didn't make it, it can't be any good. We make it better than anybody else. Well, a company the size, or a growing company like Wayport, and this applies, I think, just to many other places, is you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Why are we vertically integrating our organization when there's perfectly good suppliers, vendors, manufacturers, whoever it is, that can do this already, right? They've already developed the expertise. Why are we reinventing that? And spending valuable time and resources doing so. 100%. And unfortunately, in some cases, not doing it as well. So that was a big lesson for me in sort of resource allocation in a startup, and making sure that you stay to your core competency and stick with your core. It's not that we don't grow beyond our initial things, but you do so in a way that makes sense, that's going to generate new markets or new revenues or things like that. Not, I'm going to build my own router when I could just as easily go buy one.
Plus, you're also going through all the failed cycles.
Yeah, sure.
That Cisco's already gone through.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's 100%.
Because it's never going to be perfect. How do you combat that, right? As an ops person, CEO, founder is like, hey, we got to build in-house. Knowing what you know now, how would you not fight that argument, but how would you have that conversation of, hey, are you sure this is what we want to do?
Logically, nowadays it's different. I'll say the conversation is easier now because money doesn't flow as easily as it did. When you have people willing to throw tens of millions of dollars at you and telling you you're not spending it fast enough, you find ways to spend it. It's like closet space, right? Nobody has empty closet space. You're always going to fill it with something. And so they don't see it as having to, you're not incurring an opportunity cost, if you will, of I'm not doing something else because I'm doing this. Well, we have plenty of money. We can do both. And we'll hire a whole bunch of people to do both. The opportunity cost ultimately becomes you just don't do it as well, or you're taking away your focus from what you should be doing. Not cash, but focus. So the problem's a little easier to deal with now because it's very, very easy to point to those things and say, look, here's what we do well. Here's what we do first. I learned many years before, actually, in big company stuff, that the only reason to vertically integrate is vendor failure. I can't find somebody who does it better than me. Or I have some secret sauce, right? That we are going to do this because only we can do this specific thing the way we want to. But even then, and I have found this in, very high IP centric products, that secret sauce tends to be the tip of the pyramid, not the whole pyramid. So I'm going to allow as much outside help as I can get to build up to that pyramid, just to get to the point where now I'll just layer on that last piece myself. So I don't need to build a factory to build the whole pyramid. I need a factory to finish it out. And that way I can control my capacity constraints and all the other things that have to happen there. So it's a little, I also find that certainly with younger entrepreneurs these days that haven't been through that war, it's easier to say, you don't want to do that. I tell them half the battle for me in advisory and in mentoring is that it's not always knowing what to do. Oftentimes it's just knowing what not to do and taking the time to explain why. You don't want to do that. And here's why, because we're going to burn a whole bunch of cash. We're going to maybe be half as good as the other guy. And even if we're exactly as good, it's going to cost us that much more. So economically, it doesn't make sense. From a resource perspective, it doesn't make sense. Do I really want to go hire a team of 20 people to do something when I can just buy it? So
also, I think in those situations, by the time you get as good as a competitor, they've spent the same amount of time getting better.
That's true.
And so you're always one step behind.
That is,
unless, like you said, there's some IP, or something unique that you're bringing.
Yeah.
If it's another off-the-shelf product, I don't know why.
Yeah, and I think even nowadays, though, there aren't a lot of startups. It's tough to get funded with a Me Too product anyway. So if you're going to be building something, something's going to be unique about it,
100%.
right? Another Me Too product, you can do that in a different way, but you're not seeking funding for that because
100%.
investors aren't going to see the return. So in that case, if you're coming up with something new, then you just have to figure out how far down the road can I go with what's commercially available, and then we layer on the last piece ourselves, and so the later in the cycle you can do that, I think the less you may be spending in procurement cost or purchase cost. I'm buying a unit, and you say, well, I can build it for less. You could probably build one for less, and then you could buy one. But if you're building product, I got to keep that factory busy all the time. Okay. I'm paying for people to be there, whether they're building or not.
Yeah.
Right. So unless I am maxing out that capacity and I am managing all those things to the point of total cost of ownership and covering all those overheads and all the things that have to go, no, it just doesn't make sense. And I've already invested capital to build the thing, or I am investing money in inventory, which I wouldn't be doing if I was just buying an off-the-shelf unit or off-the-shelf components, whatever it is that I'm then consuming. So to me, it's just a big cash management problem.
Makes sense. So you mentioned two things. One question I had is, when there is VC pressure, grow fast, take more money, you're not spending enough, how do you manage or tackle that from an ops and supply? Like, how do you prevent burning money versus spending money the right way? Because I understand the pressure. I understand why VCs do that. But I feel like as leadership, founders, you have to at some point understand that after a point, it's burning cash and it's not utilizing cash the right way.
Right. So I think you've got a couple elements there.
Yeah.
One is how do you deal with the VCs?
Yeah.
And two, how do you not burn cash? The VC part of the question is challenging. I think, the nature of invested capital in startups has dramatically changed over the last 20 years.
For the better or for the worse?
I think for the better.
Okay.
I think for the betterment of founders. So 20 years ago, or even longer, not even as much, but certainly it was 20 years ago. Starting with the dot-com days and all through the 2000s and whatnot, it was, these guys would come in and they would drop millions of dollars on you and take half your company, right? Before you even had a product to sell. At which time they were driving the valuation question. And then what they would do is oftentimes they'd get impatient or irritable, and they have control. And they would dump the founders, they'd bring in their guys, they'd do what they would do. A lot of people really rebelled against this particular thing. And so people started leaning towards earlier round investors, angel, seed, family office, that type of thing, because there was a gap for people trying to found a business and raise under $1 million to get going. Some years back, don't know exactly when, I think it was Y Combinator who first came up with the safe note. Which then in turn allows a startup to build value before it actually has to do a 409A valuation, right? So in other words, we say right now we think it's, we're going to put a $3 million valuation cap on the conversion of a safe note. And that allows you to bring in $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, in smallish amounts, fill out your seed round, build value before you then have to convert. And then you're converting at 20 million or whatever. You're rewarding the early investors, but you haven't given up half your company to do
100%,
it.
yeah.
Right. So, I think it alleviates that pressure
100%.
early on to be big, fast, successful, other than, and it also allows you or forces you to be lean in what you do. I tell every startup company, I mean, I didn't invent this certainly, but the reality is, to a small company, to a startup company, it's money is blood, and you got to keep it circulating, because if you bleed out, you die. And for the first iteration of a startup's lifetime, your primary objective is not to die. We got to do whatever we can do to get to the next thing, to keep enough money, enough blood flowing through it that we can do what we have to do, so that when we get to the point where we have created some value, when we get to the point where we're converting and doing a Series A, when the venture guys really get involved, you have the ability to mitigate their impact on your business. I encountered where a venture capital fund that I'm going to leave nameless here in Austin because everybody knew them, decided that there was a whole segment of their investment portfolio just wasn't really what they wanted to do anymore. And I know it was more in depth than that, but essentially that was the effect of what they had decided. And now they're pushing all their portfolio companies to divest, to sell, to merge, to do something.
So they can liquidate or...
Yeah. so that they can get away from the investments they don't want to be a part of anymore. And not because those businesses were failing or bad or
change in thesis.
Yeah, it was the arbitrary nature of the venture, right? So again, by giving up less of a position, you mitigate some of that.
Makes sense.
I mean, it's never easy. And really I think the other kind of relevant point is choose your investors as well as
100%.
them choosing you.
100%.
They're not all your people. They're not all looking out for you. If wherever possible, you want people that understand your I won't say understand your space, but understand your journey and want to be a part of that journey with you, and aren't going to turn around and just keep knocking on the door going, what's your problem? What's your problem? What's your problem? Not that you don't want feedback from your investors, not that you don't want guidance from your investors. You certainly do. But at the end of the day, you're still in control, not them.
I also think another thing founders should try to be on the same page with the VCs on is like way of thinking or approach.
Mm-hmm.
Like if as a founder, you're very risk taking, you're going to take big bets, you need someone who's on board for that kind of journey and not a conservative investor or whatever, right? I think that's another thing people don't talk about very openly is, hey, this is my style of building a company.
Yes, that's true. I have found the early investors have gotten more targeted, or they have an investment thesis that they like to stick to. We are, some of them, it's interesting how some of them, there's always going to be a group that chases the flavor of the year, right? This year, it's all AI.
Yeah.
It was SaaS, it was crypto, it was cybersecurity, it was whatever, right? And so whatever that hot thing is, that's what they're investing in all the time. They're always into that next thing until it gets completely saturated. And then there are those who, we do life sciences, we do healthcare, we do, emerging technologies, whatever the thing is. So, and by that, they tend to understand the space well enough to recognize the value that they're investing in. And those become good people to work with and people who understand what that journey is like. Years ago in semiconductors, they would say that it was, 5 years and $50 million just to get to your first chip. And then you hope it works. Well, if you're going to invest in that, you have to know that's 5 years and $50 million, right? You don't go into that and then a year later go, hey, what the hell's going on, right? So there is, I think investors, I think they understand that better. And I think they work well with founders that respect that and try and play in their space. I still think some don't quite know where they fit into the trajectory or the risk profile. We hear a lot of, love what you're doing, that's great, give us a call when you have revenue. And I have on more than one occasion said, yeah, I appreciate that, but when I have revenue,
I don't need you.
You're not the guy I'm calling, right? There are other guys that are in a much better situation to help me than you will be. And so he's sort of stuck in between. He doesn't want to take the risk of getting in early, but he's not in a position where a lot of people are going to take him up on the Series A beyond round. So, and that's first time I encountered that with a young founder where I said that to an investor. He was looking at me like, what did you just do? What did you just do? You're chasing away an investor. He's not our investor. He's never going to invest in us. Doesn't get where we're going. Yeah. So it is matchmaking.
100%.
not all matches are good ones.
I like that. So coming back to your journey, what's the second venture that you go to after acquisition?
After Wayport, I was a company called Advent Networks. Advent Networks was we were doing cable broadband platforms in 2002. Essentially, so if you remember, or maybe you don't, Time Warner some time back rolled out a thing called Roadrunner. Roadrunner was one of the first really high-speed cable broadband platforms.
Got it.
And the guy who kind of created the Roadrunner network for Time Warner was the CTO of Advent. And back then we were doing, let me think, it was 40 meg downstream and 8 meg upstream when everybody was using like DSL lines. And, everything was bidirectional at like, maybe a meg and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really the first platform that sort of became commercially available that could do what they then called the IP triple play, which was voice, video, and data, which is essentially what everybody does now. But this was 20 something years ago. It was a little ahead of its time. That company did okay. It folded in with one of its customers. One of the, I would say one of my more interesting lessons, to try to get something from everything, don't you?
Yeah.
With that,
part of the journey of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, very much so. They originally, the original design for the product was what they called a pizza box, right? So, rack space, mounted in U. So it's a 1U pizza box that's kind of exactly what it looked like. You'd slide in, and it had, I think, 16 users per thing, per box. And that was the initial sort of concept design. And then everybody went to work on this thing, all the engineers, and everybody was designing. By the time this product was done, it was a 9U chassis with a massive mid-plane. It had system and networking switching architecture. It had multiple interface connectors in the back, 640 users. It was a thing of beauty. I mean, it was very, very impressive. And we took it to demo, and the customer said, wow, this thing is really, really great. It'd be really awesome is if we can get like a 1U pizza box that we could slide into a rack. And I thought, you ever heard the phrase that a camel is a horse designed by a committee?
Yeah.
This was a camel. It was so featured up that they lost the simplicity of the platform.
One of the value props, yeah. Yeah, you're good.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So that was sort of an interesting lesson in over designing and over featuring a product, as well as, listen to your customer. They'll tell you what they want, and don't tell the customer what they want. Because, and I've heard that. I wish I could tell you that was the last time I heard, how come they're not buying what we made? It wasn't, but yeah, that was the adventure of Advent.
It's funny you say that. I work with a lot of startups, do 0 to 1 on the software side of things. And every time someone comes to me, my first question is, so what's the problem? And have you validated that any customers want to buy this?
Yes.
Because the solution, great solution, spend $100,000, $200,000 building it. but nobody said they want it.
Right.
So like, what does the customer want?
Correct. It is, yeah, you're spot on. And in fact, when I talk with, a lot of founders, they're all worried about, the investor pitch. And I hear a lot of them, some are really interesting, some are a little odd, but I just love hearing all the ideas. But I tell them it really boils down for an investor, and really for me when I'm looking at a business in general, it comes down to 4 pretty simple things. First thing is what you just mentioned. Is this a solution to a problem? Okay. Or is it a solution that's in search of a problem? The second isn't impossible, but now you have to convince people there's a problem. It's just a little harder. So let's say we found a solution to a problem. Second question is, how big is the problem, right? Is this like 10 people in the world who have this, or are there millions of people who have this problem? If we get good answers to those first 2, then the next question is, are people willing to pay to have the problem solved? If they're not, that's a hobby. That's not a business, right? So let's say now we've got a problem, we've got a solution, and we've got customers. The only question left for an investor is, are you the guys that could then solve this problem?
Yes.
Right? And if you get those 4 questions in front with good answers, then you've got a place to go.
Yeah.
But it really does always begin with, what are we solving here exactly? The world is full of fantastic products
100%.
that were not created with any practical problem in mind, right? That's now we've done something and it's like, oh, wait a minute, what can we use this for? That's real innovation stuff. But again, that's a harder road because now you are creating a market space. There's a great quote from Henry Ford. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it was about asking your customers what they want. And he said, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they all would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
They didn't know, right? He gave them something else. So, it's a mixed bag, but the solution, the problem, the market, all that stuff becomes relevant.
I personally believe, especially in the software space, which I can speak to more than hardware, CPG, etc. When you find a good problem, it's your job as a founder, PM, whatever product, to understand what is the customer saying and how can I solve this for them that makes their life better. Because a lot of the times asking someone, what solution do you want? Like you said, they're very limited by what they know, how they know how to solve it.
Right.
And so part of the job is identifying the problem and then bridging the gap and finding the right solution for that customer base, for that problem in that situation.
It's true. So I am not and have really never been a salesperson. I like the other side of the table. I've been on the buying side and on the procurement side for many, many, many years. And I like that side of the table. Yeah. But I tell sales guys all the time, don't sell me anything. Solve my problem. I'll buy from you all day long.
Yeah.
Right. But the only way you're going to figure out what my problem is to listen, right?
Read between the lines.
Right. And figure out, because if I've got a problem, trust me, I've already been looking for the solution.
Yeah.
Right. If you come to me, don't offer me what I've already thought of. Offer me something I haven't thought of, or offer me a way to solve that problem. And boy, I'm there all day long
100%.
Because, that it becomes a critical thing. And even with my advisory, with my consulting stuff, I do not sit down with clients and go, okay, you got to do this and you got all this and all this. What problem are we solving first? How about we start with this? Because the one real truism in consulting, and I think it just in life in general, if you solve somebody's problem, they come to you with more problems.
Yeah. 100%. Sweet. So, going back to your early journey, startups, 2 companies in, you've worked at 5 various startups at various levels.
Yes.
Any one of those that stand out more particular to you in terms of an experience of learning and what you gained out of it?
Well, so the last of them was a semiconductor company, and it was the journey itself was extraordinary. It took a longer period of time, and we were developing a 10 gigabit Ethernet on a chip in 2005, 6, 7, around that time frame, when everybody was working on 1 gig.
Yep.
We went through an acquisition with Intel, and it was very challenging in that we were a team of 50 people, and they were a very large company with people in the business unit and people in the M&A side and ICAP and teams of lawyers and all the rest of that stuff. And it made it very difficult to navigate because everybody kind of came at it from their own way, and we had to work our way through it. And there were a lot of long nights, sometimes like go home at 6 a.m., take a shower and come back to work kind of days, just working to get that deal done. But I do recall one of my teammates on that saying, you know, the amazing thing about all this is, you know, if we're not like completely dead when it's over, just think of the amazing stuff we have learned how to do.
Yeah.
And this was really where I had done due diligence before, specifically operational due diligence on the acquiring side when I was with bigger companies, and got involved with some of the due diligence on the sell side with some of these others, but never this deep. And it was eye-opening, and it was really hard. And I realized at the same time I've always had a thing for negotiation. I enjoy it. I've done some coursework in it, and really it's kind of a thing for me. But the contract side of it and the detail stuff that has to go through, I don't know why I developed a skill for reading that stuff. I'm not an attorney, don't want to be an attorney. In fact, by the time we were done, I said I felt like I'd swallowed an attorney and he was giving me indigestion. But, you know, all of a sudden having that skill set of methodology, which I've applied in for some P clients, for some others that I had that were looking to do acquisitions that needed due diligence done. I focus much more so on the operations side of the due diligence world. Everybody, and rightly so, focuses on the sales, the finance, the top end growth, the all of the metrics and KPIs that are required. And I'm the guy standing over there going, okay, yeah, you see like all this operational stuff over here? This is where the money's being spent. We should probably take a pretty good look at that. And some are good at it. I don't want to say nobody's good at it. A lot are very good at it. I've been around it for so long. I just have a spidey sense for it, I guess. You know, you smell stuff. You just know things are happening somewhere. So, yeah, that was it was difficult. It was challenging. It was also at the end of that period is when I decided I kind of made a determination that I did not want to do startups anymore. And that's when I started Clark Addison Group and started doing the independent consulting, largely because I just thought the ability to do value-added work, projects, solve problems, create order from chaos, whatever you want to call that. And it wasn't initially really even focused on startups at all. Most of the clients I'd done early on were medium, some small, but mostly medium sized, some pretty big, publicly traded, medical device stuff for, I don't know, half a dozen years. Got deeply involved with a project which was unbelievably great. But for me, it was, let's just show me problems, or let's talk about your problems, or let me identify a problem and let's solve it. I had a guy at one of my clients, and I'd been working on this thing, and I sort of was bringing him along and getting him involved with sort of the change, but we were optimizing some of their manufacturing platforms and other things, and doing some changes to the supply chain. And and he was like, "Oh yeah," he said, "I see what you're doing." He said, "This is pretty cool." "Yeah, no, he says, I can do this." I go, "Yeah, you can." And he said, "Yeah, I can." He says, "This consulting thing's pretty good." He says, "You think I can do the consulting thing?" "I think I can do the consulting thing." I said, "Well, let me ask you a question." I said, "Yes, you're right. You see how this is done and you can do this. Why didn't you? You were here before me. Why didn't you do it?" And he kind of looked at me, but the answer was he didn't have the recognition of the problem. Now, probably does now. Sometimes it's just, you just see things enough times, you just know what that problem is 100%. Happening there. And then you affect the solution. So that kind of work is what I love to do. And then, ended up being asked to talk to some founders, and I've worked with some startups, but I wasn't going to get deeply involved. I just wanted to help out with some stuff, and started doing some mentoring, and then, got sucked in again. So against all my, what I consider to be my better judgment, but at the same time, I'm absolutely loving it. So
a couple quick questions.
Sure.
On the acquisition with Intel, what was one big learning or one thing that you look back and be like, okay, I'm prepared now. I'm going to approach, if you're ever in that situation again, approach differently? Because what I'm trying to get out is, any founder listening who's potentially going through an acquisition, what are things they should look out for? How should they be prepared for that event? Because it's probably hasn't happened to you.
Know your value and your company's value, and hold on to that pretty tight, because the acquirer is going to try and get the best deal they can. And so they're going to do everything they can to devalue.
When you say devalue, you mean devalue the deal or devalue the offering?
The offering primarily. I mean, how much they're spending. In the case of, I don't want to speak terribly bad for Intel, but it was, they had competing entities. The business unit wanted what we had. And ICAP, their job was to cut the best deal they could. And sometimes those things were in conflict.
Makes sense.
And as a startup, you're the little guy in the middle of that. You're the meat in the sandwich somehow, and you have to navigate that. And the best way to do that is just know and understand your value, believe in what you think is worth. If the offer was right or the offer was fair, and they start nitpicking away at, we want this and give us that, and just throw this into the deal. The hardest thing in a negotiation is for people to walk away. Oh, we're in too deep, or it's been too much. You never get into a negotiation you can't walk away from. Sometimes just the threat of walking away is all that's needed.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it that you start there. Certainly not. But that is, that's a big element. I think is more than anything for founders that are going through acquirers is just know the value and don't necessarily jump at the first offer you get. There's a lot of stories about huge companies that were offered, $10 million when they were nothing, that are now worth $10 billion, right? And they said, I don't want the $10 million. I believe in this thing, and I believe the value is much greater than this. So, it all depends. And part of that, it's interesting that I think you hear the question less and less. We used to hear it a lot more, and that was from investors, what's your exit strategy?
Yeah.
My glib answer is I don't have an exit strategy. But the reality is, what I tell anybody is, I'm not building this business to exit. I'm building this business to succeed. If we do that well, suitors are going to come. People are going to want to buy it. Their value is going to come, or the market's going to tell us it's worth so. But only if it's actually something.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm putting lipstick on a pig so that I could sell it somewhere, I'm still a pig wearing lipstick. So, I don't go into a business thinking, here's what I got to do to exit. My thing is, here's what we got to do to grow. Yeah. Here's what we got to do to succeed. And the rest comes later.
I listened to this podcast, and one of the hosts mentioned, in a negotiation, understand what the other side wants. Why are they there? Mm-hmm. Why are they even making the deal? Mm-hmm. And as long as they get most of that, mm-hmm. you have a lot of wiggle room to fight on the smaller points.
Of course.
You just have to be uncomfortable, and you have to put yourself in that spot. And like you said, if you're willing to walk away at some point, you have the leverage. The uncomfortableness is what they refer to.
It's true, but there's also, your first point is, I think, the most important, and that is always know what they want from a negotiation. What's important to them? The answer is, it might not be the most important thing to you.
Yeah.
It might mean very little to you.
Yeah.
But boy, you're going to hang on to that because you know it's important to them. And now you have something to trade.
Yeah.
Right? I need this for that. You want this for that. That's, the nature of it. If you are, you absolutely have to get over the discomfort of 100%. Negotiating. Look, the simplest thing I've told people about negotiation, the first rule why people don't get what they want is they're afraid to ask. Right? It's not even that they don't ask, they're afraid to ask. My answer is, and what happens next if the answer is no? Were you mortally wounded by that somehow? Why are you afraid to ask? So understand what the other people, the other parties want. And really, truly the most important thing, and it's different I guess it depends on the size or structure of the deal or the type of deal. If I'm negotiating a contract for services or products or, any sort of an ongoing relationship, if the other party walks out of that negotiation thinking they've gotten screwed, they will spend the entirety of the length of that contract finding a way to get it back.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want that. Who needs that kind of headache?
Yeah.
Right? It's not a way to negotiate. So you want everybody thinking they got at least something that's good for them.
Yeah.
And everybody likes to use the word win-win. I don't necessarily think it's win-win. I just think it's everybody's good with what they've got. And they didn't get everything, but they got enough. And if we did it well, and this is, I've had this conversation with some contract manufacturers when we're doing these very in-depth manufacturing service agreements. We're going to be building product with you guys, and we're going to do it in 6 different places around the world.
Yeah.
And these contracts are lengthy, and they cover every last detail. And we'll take a couple of months negotiating these things back and forth. And I tell them, when we're done, we're going to sign this thing. We're all going to have a drink. I'm going to put that in the drawer, and I hope we never look at it ever again. Because if I got to pull the contract out of the drawer, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's the rules of engagement.
Makes sense.
And if everybody agrees to what we're going to do, it's good. And yeah, it's going to be a little back and forth, and sometimes it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but so what? You know, it's not the end of the world. Everybody can still walk out of the room smiling and shaking hands.
In the journey of starting Clark Addison Group, you're mentoring, advising a lot of startups varying from health tech, medical devices, CPG. I'm assuming most of the startups you work with have some manufacturing component involved or some supply chain component involved?
Most do, not all. Some are just program management. One developing a SaaS platform that they were having trouble figuring out how to price their product, how to focus their efforts to deliver. With medical device, this project started very, very simply with me taking a look at overhead costs. It's just a guy I knew who was working on a thing and had a little question about something. So 6 weeks, did an evaluation. But what I found was a lot of what the overhead costs were so high because they were building things in all the wrong locations. The things were in their factory, didn't belong in their factory, and offered them a whole different roadmap to changing out their manufacturing platform. And so took it onto that and was doing that at the same time they were developing a new product, and they were having program management issues in that development. And I was asked to run the project.
And this, we're talking about SmartPack.
No, this was a company called Arthrocare.
Okay.
Which was later acquired by Smith & Nephew. They're a very large medical device company. So, I spent years taking that from development through FDA and into market, and it was a surgical platform. It was actually incredibly cool. Really, really enjoyed that. No, SmartPack came around by virtue of an accelerator. Somebody I know who I'd done some work with before had said that this young founder had come to him and had an interesting idea, and he thought that this might be something I'd be interested in talking to him about, maybe mentoring him. At the time, he was 24, never done this before. And he was, and still does a paramedic who got tired of counting the contents of his bag. Honestly, I mean, these guys go out in the field with these packs with 200-300 items in it of all sorts of medications and supplies. And he's telling me that at the beginning of every shift, they have to literally count. Inventory the bag with a clipboard, they're pencil whipping it. And I'm like, that can't even possibly be true. I mean, in this day and age, and, so being a bit of an inventory geek that I am, I was like, well, there's got to be a better way than that. He goes, yes. And he developed and created the idea for a bag that could read its own contents using RFID, and then report the contents to an app on the user's phone. So first responders, paramedics, field services, you name it, these guys can look at their phone and it'll say red, yellow, green, you're missing this. By the way, about a third of their supplies get thrown away every year because they expire. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I can't believe nobody's thought of this before, which, by the way, is my favorite kind of problem. We are now taking old technology and redeploying it to solve another problem.
Yeah.
Right? This is not esoteric. I'm not inventing anything brand new.
Reapplying
a thing. And we actually were able to file a use case patent for it.
Nice.
We're waiting for that to be granted. So in meeting with him, and I was speaking with him about, questioning him about, you know, the why and the what, and what do you thought about this? And he says, well, I have this pitch deck. And I said, I don't care about your pitch deck. Just tell me what you're working on. And so this, what I thought would be a 30-minute meeting is now in like, you know, hour 3 or so. And I asked him a question. Don't remember the question, but he gave me the answer that you very, very rarely get from founders, from first-time founders especially. He said, I don't know. And I just looked at him. I said, that's the right answer. You know, he wasn't trying to bullshit anybody. He wasn't faking his way through it. Believe me, I've heard that more times than I care to. And he said, but that's a really, really interesting question. He said, we should find that out. I'm like, wow, it's coachable too. That's impressive. By the time that meeting was over, I was like, you know, I want to do this. I love the opportunity. We've already got military is looking hard at this thing. They love all that it can do. And anybody with field gear, home health care, sports supplies.
A lot of applications.
There's massive numbers of applications. But we start with the MS because we are focusing on the marketplace we know first.
Yeah.
So in that, you know, I think part of it was also, it does require, there is a hardware element to it. It's got deals in supply chain and inventory management stuff. So that appeals to me as well. But mostly this guy solved his own problem.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a huge problem. So
when you had promised to not promised, but you had decided to not do startups again.
Yeah.
Was it the founder that brought you back? Was it the opportunity, a little bit of everything? Why jump back into this after mentoring for 15, 17 years?
That's a great question. So I'd only really been mentoring for probably less than 5 years at that point. I never really thought of myself in a role as a mentor.
Yeah.
I'd been mentored and absolutely know and appreciate the value of it, but just never thought of myself in that regard, and just sort of fell into it through advisory and other stuff. In this particular case, it was a combination of things. It was definitely him. It was definitely the founder. Founders, I think what a lot of people don't know or don't appreciate is founders are evangelists.
Yeah. First
and foremost. It's their thing. It's their idea. It's their baby. They are the ones that they can pitch it and speak to it better than almost anybody else can, because they feel that passion for it. He had that, his enthusiasm, the size of the market, the type of problem being solved, the nature of almost simplicity of the technology. And yet, I don't ever confuse simple with easy. All those things sort of just coalesced at a time when I guess I was open to it, and just decided to take another swing at it. I don't regret it, but there are days that I scratch my head, and certainly 2023 was a pretty hard year to be raising money for startup companies. So I'm scratching my head going, I'm not sure why I'm doing this again, but
you're in it now.
I am now. And 2024 has turned quite well for us. So
nice.
It's going well.
Sweet. A couple of quick questions I like asking every guest. What's your support system? How do you still run a startup, mentor, do all these things as 20, 25 years into the space?
Friends, family, coworkers, and specifically, in the startup realm, in Austin, there's an ecosystem here that just doesn't exist the same way in other places.
Makes sense.
It's collaborative. It is open. It is, people don't see it here like a zero-sum game where, in order for me to succeed, that means somebody else has to fail.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that, as people in Austin know, not many people here are from here.
Yeah.
When you find somebody who grew up here, that's truly like unicorn status. So because everybody is here from somewhere else, the desire to connect becomes real. And there are plenty of groups here in town that do regular meetups, happy hours, connective sessions, whatever it is.
Nice.
And that is an amazing support system, because what you come to realize is you aren't the only one that's dealing with this. I had one person that I worked with that was, she was thinking about starting up a brand, a CPG thing.
Yeah.
And she really hadn't done this before, and she didn't really know how to connect to it, or, the what and the why. And so I connected her to a couple of things. I said, you should go to this meetup. There's a CPG group. There's a women's founder group. And what was kind of remarkable was she came back and she said, wow, that was really great. She says, but I got to tell you, I really kind of felt really just kind of dumb, kind of out of place. I said, why? She says, well, everybody there seemed to know stuff, and I don't know stuff. And it's like imposter syndrome. And I said, yeah, you and pretty much everybody else in the room. I said, everybody walks around with that. The trick is, don't fake it. Just be real, be open about it. And people here will help you. Right. And, that's not the case everywhere.
Yeah.
It's certainly, I don't see that a lot in the Bay Area. I don't see it in other cities. It's just everybody kind of closes off because they only want for them. So as support systems go, I think Austin, for a founder, for an entrepreneur, for investors, for lots of things, it's such a broad and open community that I think it brings the group together in a pretty meaningful way.
I do this thing where I ask every guest a question for a future guest.
Sure.
And so the question for you is, do you believe in yourself?
I do. That, that's a great question, because you can't do this if you don't believe in yourself. You can't start a business if you do not absolutely believe in the inevitable success of that business. Even after you have failed at other things, you have to believe in yourself that you can do this. It is that drives almost every entrepreneur I know. We tell stories about how does it go with you can't do that, it's never going to work, you're never going to get money, is usually like the first 3 lines of every great success story you ever heard. Well, so after hearing those things, why do people keep going? Because they believe in themselves, right? If you can't, what's your alternative? Okay. If you can't believe in yourself to do that, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Go be and get a great job and go do a thing. And so yeah, it is, I don't think lack of confidence has ever been my problem.
I like it. What's your question for a future guest?
Oh, that's a good one. What my question for a future guest? Well, you sort of asked it at the beginning, but I've been asked it in a different way that I like, and it's about, you know, the origin of it. I love to ask origin stories.
Got it.
What was it that got you to the starting line of being an entrepreneur? For me, honestly, I would have liked to have known that about myself earlier.
Why are you in it? Why are you doing it?
Well, you know, I'm a big, let's see if I can bring this into a more cohesive thing. I'm a firm believer in embracing randomness. I think great stuff happens when you keep your eyes open and put yourself out there. Not that you expect things to happen, because the minute you start expecting it to happen, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. But
to just be present and see when things are happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you know, I've heard, gee, I wish I would have had a chance to do something like that, or gee, I never really got a thing like that. And sometimes I think, yeah, you probably did. You know, you just weren't paying attention, or you dismissed it, or, you know, or you were afraid of the risk. So, you know, I guess the question is, you know, are you open to accepting randomness? To accepting the fact that, for me, some of the coolest things I've done, some of the best people I know, I met completely at random. Met them in places I wasn't planning on going. You know,
happenstance.
Happens. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you right now because we met completely at random.
Yeah.
Right? Just sat outside and had a conversation during South by, right?
Yeah.
And here we are. But and not because either of us, I don't believe, had any expectation that anything was going to happen beyond the conversation.
100%.
It was just a great conversation to have.
100%.
And so you just do that. And so to me, you know, are you open to the randomness that's around you?
I like it. Sweet. Well, that's all I had. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
Where can listeners find you? Where can they reach out if they have questions? Anything you want to plug? And we can link everything in the description.
Well, I mean, the thing I'm plugging most of all these days is Smart Pack Systems. We are, with any luck, we just actually joined the residence program at Antler.
Oh, yeah.
And began that last week.
Nice.
Which is fantastic. I love those guys. They're really, that's a really unique setup they got going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Smart Pack, you can find me on reach in on LinkedIn. I am at a bunch of networking events around town. Fiesta is a great.
Are you going today?
I am not going today. They hold it on Tuesday nights, and Tuesdays is usually a tough spot for me. Yeah. But I know John and Cherie very well. Love those guys. They're some of my favorite people around. I love what they're doing for the community. Austin Connections is a Wednesday night happy hour that happens. I've met tons of people through them. So yeah, I'm just around, and if you hear it or you find me or you want to say hello, I love connecting people, and I love to connect with people. And I love to hear what people are working on.
Sweet. We'll link everything in the description, but thank you for coming on.